in.
Hi guys, well, I will not win the prize for following the template because I had no idea what I was doing. So the Failure Factors Initiative was started at the last face-to-face conference that we had, where I pitched this idea that humans typically don't learn so well from things that we do successfully, but we're enormously good at learning from failure. And thanks to Walton Family Foundation, they thought that that was a good idea and supported the idea of having a little bit of some money to support moving this forward, and as part of a CMP initiative. We had a launch meeting last November, and we had some great plans to move forward with a learning group and some field implementation and some surveys of conservation organizations. And then COVID hit, and that of course put any field implementation out the door. Can I go to the next slide? So we really are attempting to bring in evidence in a very different way. Evidence rather than sort of systematic reviews or empirical data. This is expert opinion at a sort of rapid clip of adaptive management. So the idea about learning from failure, typically, as we discussed in the launch meeting, was a way to speed up the way that teams think about what's working and what's not, and integrate that rapidly into their project activities. And part of this came from an understanding of the smart patrolling mechanism that lots of us are using to detect threats and police areas, both in community conservancies and in national parks. And they're using what you learn during the patrol and saying, what should we be doing next, is a very cool way of having teams get together to think about what's working and what's not, and rapidly adapting their strategy for what they should do on the next patrol. So as we couldn't do anything directly in the field because of COVID, what I was able to do was to find two very smart graduate students at Yale School of Forestry, and they, with the rest of us, put together a survey to interview a bunch of the Conservation Measures partners and some other donors to find out, particularly focusing on after action reviews and pause and reflect sessions. And I want to thank everybody who actually did participate in these reviews and provide the two students with some great information that they were able to distill just recently into a first draft of a report. We're currently editing that report with the students and hope to produce something to share with all of CMP within the next, I think, the next 3 or 4 weeks, which is great. The one thing that we were able to do was convince the European Union, the DevCo, their major environmental funding wing. They gave FAO, WCS, and C4 and CFRAD a year and a half ago, 45 million euros to work on a sustainable wildlife management program. And we were able to convince Philippe Maillot and FAO to adopt pause and reflect as a core element of all of the partners' monitoring, evaluation, and learning frameworks, which is pretty cool. They're all terrified about the whole prospect of doing it because they've never done it before. But they're really interested in seeing how after action reviews or pause and reflect sessions can speed up teams' abilities to be able to talk to one another in a transparent and an honest way about what actions are working and why, and what's not going in the right direction or in a direction they want, and what they need to do differently. So the great thing is this is now baked into the work plans of WCS, C4, CRAD, and FAO, and it will be a very interesting experiment for the Failure Factors Initiative to really see whether, in fact, pause and reflect sessions in practice really do two things. One, build a culture of sharing of lessons learned, particularly failures amongst teams, whether we can capture those lessons and share them outside the individual teams, and whether we think it's a really good way to rapidly adapt project actions rather than sort of midterm evaluations and end of project evaluations. So I think this is very promising. And as we come out of COVID, I'd very much like to work with the Failure Factors Initiative partners to see if we can replicate what's happening in the EU SWIM project in other conservation NGOs. Thanks, that's me.
Thank you for that, David. Right on time. If there are any questions, we have a chance to jump in now, or you can throw it in the chat. Hearing none.
Could I maybe ask one question? This is Caroline. Sure. David, if people are interested or able to get involved, how do they do that?
Please just send to me an email. You know where I live, and absolutely, I'd love to. I think that one of the best ways to do this is reach out and give me an email. I'll send you the proceedings from the launch workshop we had in the National Zoo in Washington last November, and as soon as the Yale students' first survey of pause and reflect sessions comes out, I'll share that with everybody, of course.